What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, your host, Robin Stebbins, and today I have the amazing Liev Dalton. He was on my podcast, I was on his podcast, Beyond Terrain. Highly recommend. He's had some excellent guests, excellent content, so you're in for a real treat. So Liev, if you can just introduce yourself, kind of tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing, and we can just go from there and have some fun.
Cool, yeah, so I kind of got into this whole mess of the terrain about 5 years ago now, kind of when everyone hopped on the train, and I was halfway through a biochemistry and molecular biology degree. I was going down the path. I was going to be a dental surgeon. Was in with the dental admissions at my university. You know, I was on the track, and that whole fiasco kind of turned my world upside down. Spent a lot of time by myself, kind of thinking about things, contemplating things, and spent a lot of time outside, which was a huge factor in my sort of transmutation to the path that I'm on now. I was kind of on a more meaningless path and really transferred to one that was more family, community oriented, you know, more meaning focused, right? You know, I kind of found God, I found, you know, a higher power. These were all things that were really important to me. And then I just couldn't go back to that old lifestyle, right? So a lot of things came with this. Obviously, I started learning about, you know, alternative ways of looking at science. I was really invested in modern science prior to kind of switching over to the train camp. So it was a big shift for me, especially coming from like taking microbiology classes, virology classes, and biochemistry, stuff like that. And then my whole world just being turned upside down and realizing that a lot of this was just nonsense and totally unfalsifiable claims being made, ad hoc explanations, just a true lack of logic and really a lack of science and even empiricism. And I criticize empiricism sometimes, but you know, strict empiricism is really important if we are going to do science in an empirical fashion. So, but we don't do that, you know, so really I just have a different perspective on academia now, and I still love science. I think the train is really hitting the nail on the head, and that's kind of what my podcast is all about. Instagram, social media, stuff like that. That's all kind of centered around the train, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's huge to be at your age. I mean, it's not easy to get into university and dental school. Like, it's the same here with, you know, nursing school. So I don't even know, you know, put it up a notch. It's like you sell your soul to get into these schools, and to be able to switch gears and stay to your soul is amazing. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you.
I mean, the first, a bunch of things, like being able to find what this show is about is you are the medicine. And so that's different for each person, and we can make our own medicine the way we want. Personally, I find going out into nature is not only the blueprint for what, you know, we should all be doing. It's not confusing. Just look to what are the wild animals doing? How do they heal their bodies? That type of thing. And then finding that center within you. I find that a lot of times, you know, when we say the word God, a lot of people get triggered. But being able to say, like, hey, I found God, and it doesn't have to be the organized religion, or it doesn't have to be a dogma or put into a box. So can you kind of explore with me a little bit, like, what does that mean for you as far as using nature, finding your way out there, and what did it mean to find God?
Yeah, what a big topic, and what a great question. I might not even be able to answer this in the most straightforward way. I'll do my best here. For me, it's a journey for sure. And it's maybe not even something that, we say that we find God, but maybe it's more of a continual finding. I was on, I guess I found more so this path that I'm going to go down for the rest of my life, like continuously wanting to become the best version of myself and improve myself so that I have the capacity to improve my family and community and those around me. And I think connecting with nature allowed me to see these sacred patterns that are within nature, even something like biogeometry spoke out a lot to me, and just sort of, Fibonacci, all these kind of funny patterns that we see in nature from, a mathematical side of things. Now, I'm no expert in that, but that's always really spoken to me. And that was really one of the first things that I was like, oh, there's something more than just material in a way. There's this design, and, it kind of gets into a lot of different questions that I don't have answers to as well. But I think it's just this continual curiosity and seeking, not getting stuck in a dogmatic way of thinking. If I were to find God in a religious text, and everybody has their journey, of course, but I find it's very easy to get stuck in the dogma, like you were talking about, of these are the rules, and you just lack curiosity, and you lack that continuous journey. Life is always changing. That's the only constant in nature, is change. So, I hope that kind of answers your question there.
Yeah. I mean, and I've been exploring that as well. And, somebody had asked me, well, how can you say that the Bible isn't the Word of God if you haven't ever actually read it cover to cover? And so I actually read it cover to cover. And, I explored, there's some beautiful things in there, but this is written by men. I mean, if you learn about King James and how he wrote the King James Bible, and it's like, there's some politics in there. And so I had always felt, I had an experience with God when I was 3, and I just knew things after that experience. And one of them was, you won't find God in the religion. And I don't want to trigger people, but we're talking, there's a lot of manipulation, and there's a lot of reasons behind what has been written and what has been allowed to transform. So the reason I always ask that question is, I think it's so important when we have that center to create and understand, this is our healing trajectory, so that you can, in that moment, say, okay, this is not being in the dental industry and taking out healthy teeth. And, I think there's a reason, like, dentists have a high suicide rate. They know deep down inside what they're doing. But, finding that center, finding the God within you, and realizing, like, everything in nature is fluid. So don't stay stuck in, okay, this is what it means, and then now everyone should understand what this means for me, so let's follow that. It's more, okay, this is how I'm feeling the God within me.
Yeah.
Pan out.
It's your relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do love the study of theology. Like, I find it fascinating to read about these really old texts that have carried a lot of meaning and influence. And it's sort of alchemical in a way. It's like there's an underlying fabric to these texts that rings true. And then sometimes the manifestation of it kind of comes out a little sideways, and then it gets misinterpreted and rewritten and stuff like that. But so I've read, like, Bible, Quran, even Torah, maybe not the Talmud, but there's a lot of really great wisdom in these books as well. And that's why people turn to them. Yeah. That's why people turn to them in times of need. But it's just important you got to kind of read between the lines and really stay on that path of what are you actually looking for. You're not looking for external validation. You're trying to find, the medicine within. That's
Exactly.
exactly what you're trying to find. It's not, there are no answers. There's no one out there that can help you. It's all inside. So that was an important realization too that I had.
And that's the kind of how I sort of structure my, I work hospice, and I work with inside the medical industrial complex still as a nurse, but it's home health. So I educate and I just stay with people where they are. But the reason too I ask is for me, and China learning about things like black mold. I wrote a Substack on that, and parasites and yeast and bacteria. I kept going back to the terrain. And then, does God make mistakes? I mean, that's sort of the question I ask. And so, why do we need to take something to stay in health?
Yeah. We're not deficient in ivermectin or
Yeah.
or pharmaceuticals of any kind. And we're not even deficient in, it kind of gets into a bigger discussion, but even talking about like a vitamin deficiency is kind of a difficult conversation to have. I would agree that we can be deficient in love and light, nature, and the human experience, which with that comes the consumption of whole foods. We're disconnected from that. But, health is very simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it with, you need this, many milligrams of vitamin C every day to be healthy. It's like, you don't need to know these things.
Yeah.
Begs a lot of questions in the first place. But, you can look back on our ancestors and they didn't know any of this stuff. They didn't know the biochemistry of our food and nutrition, and they didn't have food pyramids and stuff. They ate what was local and seasonal and tuned in to what was provided. So I do think that you can be deficient in things of that nature, but not necessarily. I think it's unhelpful to look at, oh, I'm deficient in magnesium. You should really look at, what in my environment am I deficient of, a more real thing than this element or vitamin or whatever it is.
That's brilliant. I'm so happy that you said that, because what that's doing is allowing a translator to tell you what to put in your body. And usually the translator, monetizes your ignorance in some way. And, the allopathic and the functional, I think, are really similar in that they get you in a state of fear. Like, you could get a deficiency disease and the soils are depleted. I did an article on that because I thought, well, are they depleted? Why do we keep saying that? Like, you hear people say the same thing over and over, and I start to think, okay, that might be propaganda. Turns out, yeah, it is. Factory farming, obviously, is leaving pesticides and residues, but fruit and vegetables won't grow unless they have the nutrients they need. Yeah, it'd be better not to have fertilizers, but again, your body is perfect and adept once you're not in the translator. Like, oh, here I am eating paleo or keto or fruitarian, whatever it is, you're not honoring your body.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like, I have a friend of mine here who's a farmer. He does the biodynamic farming. Totally, pretty well a closed system. He's been doing it for about 20 years. Really interesting guy. Really knows Steiner's work in and out. And he tests the microbial content of his soil, because he takes sort of a similar view. There's no lack of nutrients in the soil, but there's a lack of, in his mind, a lack of microbes and parasites or worms or fungus or whatever it is. That's what's lacking. There's a lack of life in the soil, and obviously our monocultures is inconducive to that. The pesticides straight up kills all of this life in the soil. Again, you're throwing off nutrient ratios with fertilizers. So when you see fertilizers, is the big problem with where I'm from, back home here in Prince Edward Island. What we're seeing is all the runoff is going into our rivers, and we have tons of algae growing because there's a huge imbalance of nutrients and nitrogen, phosphorus, and in the rivers now, right? So we're seeing that kind of more obvious. It's more obvious, when it's in the river, because you can see and you can smell all this algae. When it's in the field, it's not so obvious because, you're growing corn, potatoes, canola, rest. Corn, potatoes, canola, rest. So you're not seeing the repercussions as when it's running off in the river, but the same thing's happening. You just can't see it with your eyes. But anyways, his idea is that there's a lack of life in the soil. It's not necessarily, and I think that would probably ring true with your perspective on it a little bit too.
Well, I mean, just all these lights are going off when you're speaking. One, when I just was taking from my garden, looks nice and neat and tidy. I'm not leaving it the way nature intended. I'm not following the blueprint. And then when I started just leaving everything there, letting it go fallow, letting it didn't look great, but now I've got soil coverage. I'm not taking anything out of my soil without leaving the rest in that balance. And when you're talking about using herbicides and pesticides and all sorts of chemicals on the soil, it looks like, a beautiful field. But now, like you said, you have all this algae growing in the streams, and you can tell it's out of harmony. And so it's the exact same thing within our bodies. When you take a pesticide within your body, or, I think even colon cleanses, like you're taking a flood and removing all of those microbes out of your intestines and your gut lining. And it might look clean to our programmed mind, but you go into an old growth forest that's in harmony. And that soil is lifeblood. I will eat that soil. I'll take a little bit out of the soil, and it's like, I feel good, and I do it naturally. And I think, man, we're the only animal that doesn't consume, a little bit of soil every day.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I learned from Dr. Bear Lando, I just posted a podcast. I had him on my podcast there. The one thing I learned from him that always stuck with me was that, gardening is the same thing as healing. It's a very similar process. If you can learn how to tend to a garden and increase the vitality and life force of a garden, adding the soil, like naturally building up the soil and the nutrients and all this stuff and the life within, then you could do that in a body too. You just have to apply the same principle. So that's always remained really true. And on the parasite side of things, I think that's a really important point and something that I haven't really thought of. But when you do a parasite cleanse, you might think that you're seeing these big worms coming out of you, and I do think that these worms play a role. But what else is coming out of you?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, you're definitely taking the other beneficial things with you, right? And we tend to group it within beneficial microbes and then harmful ones. We come from the standpoint that every form of life plays a very important role. So if you do have parasites, it's likely indicative of some sort of toxicity, especially heavy metals. They even connect them with pesticides and plastics and different stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when you're doing these cleanses, you are decreasing the life in your internal environment. You're not increasing it, which is the stance that I would take, is clean up your, what you're consuming and increase the life force within your body so that it can regain that harmony. That would be the path that I would take towards a true healing. Now, not to say that, maybe there are times where an acute cleanse may be beneficial, but again, it's like once it's calling for 3-4 times a year to do a parasite cleanse, of like, you're obviously not addressing the root cause. If you're going to be stuck doing this thing over and over and over again. That's obvious to me.
And I feel that's the same loop as the allopathic path. It's like, why do you keep needing to do this? And when I went into a kind of a deep dive with parasites, I found I was going to say, here's your beneficial ones, and here's your, not so beneficial that might need to be cleansed. I already had that bias, and what I found is that they're all beneficial. If you have a tumor, you actually have parasites that will consume that. How perfect is that? They'll consume it and then leave with the tumor out of your body without reharming you. It's the same terrain. Like, how can you say it's the terrain with the virus and not with everything else? You know?
Absolutely. It's really interesting too. The parasites. I was reading a few papers the other day on it, and it was talking about one of the pathways within parasites and some microbes and fungus as well. Is they can actually take like a collection of toxicities. Usually, it's toxicity or tissue, dead, dying tissue, and they reduce it. And this is speaking very, modern biochemistry way, but they reduce it to the fundamental elements and they're not oxidized elements, they're reduced, so they have free energy to be able to be rebuilt, right? It's like the building block, the same elements that you would see in the soil. The parasites can actually do this naturally. They reduce it to the fundamental building blocks. If you want to think it very materialistically and from a biochemical standpoint, they're giving you free carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and even, they reduce metals, heavy metals even. There are classes of ideas where, very low natural amounts of heavy metals isn't harmful to the body, because it's true that there are heavy metals that occur, in your soil, in clay. It's like a ton of aluminum, like really, really high percentages of aluminum in clay. Does that mean clay is bad? I don't think playing in the clay is going to be bad for you, even though it's a huge amounts of aluminum. So, there's a natural amount that does get into our bodies that our bodies are able to deal with, and maybe even necessary, right? Like if we had zero arsenic in your body, like absolutely zero, there's evidence that there are some, enzymes that need arsenic to be able to function in very low quantities. Now, again, this is very speaking in this biochemical terms, whatever. When you simplify it, it's very simple. You can live in accordance to nature. You don't need to worry about, maybe a little bit of heavy metals in your spring. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily need to worry about that. Now, adding fluoride to your water and stuff like that, these are
or injecting it in.
Or injecting, yeah, exactly. It's a very different situation, right? In different quantities, it throws off this whole natural balance. Same with fish. Fish tend to have a lot of heavy metals in them. Are we not meant to eat fish?
Right.
Stuff like that. It's like, so for me, I don't necessarily look for answers in the literature anymore, although it can be very confirmatory, but I look for answers in nature. That's what's obvious to me and what reigns true, right? So it's,
yeah,
I know that I can eat fish. I don't got to worry about heavy metal toxicity.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing is to stay out of fear, because then you're not going to allow a translator to tell you what to do with your body, and the fear is like, oh my God, I have parasites. Well, let's just break that down a little bit. Maybe you need them right now. Maybe they're beneficial. Maybe you have some terrain to clean up naturally. And I always say it's kind of a top-down approach when you're cleaning that terrain. Anything that interrupts the body, I look to, again, nature. What do wild animals do to clean up? They fast, they go next to a body of water, and they rest.
Yeah.
Lay in the sunshine if they need to. I think that's really simple. And, kind of going back to the parasites, one of the things I found, an actual article in the mainstream news was about sharks, and scientists can test the amount of metals in the water based on how many parasites are in the sharks that actually remove the metals from the sharks. And when we're intact, when we're not scrubbing the film off our skin, we have that sebum on our skin, on our hair, and our mouth, all the way down through the digestive tract, you're protected. You're not going to take in toxins and metals. Your body is brilliant at just, that's a toxin, that's not needed, flush it out. But we're so programmed to scrub everything and, cleanse everything. And that is, if you don't want to use the hand sanitizer with this, get the organic grain alcohol and and, different essential oils, but it's the same thing. You're still removing your body's protective layer, which I feel is, kind of like a one-way valve. It's going to let stuff out, but not absorb things in when protected. So I think, I'd like to get your opinion on just how to keep your body in that state of harmony using, which I love, nature as the blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this might be an interesting starting point that kind of adds to that. Adjutus von der Planets did very interesting experiments. Did he publish them? No. Do I know the truth or validity of them? I don't know, but I know that he spoke about these experiments. So he said that he fed like a cat. He had two groups of cats. He had one group that he fed raw tuna, and he had the other one, and he fed cooked tuna, and tested the metals before going in, tested the metals in the fecal matter, and in the raw category, there was barely any metal absorbed, and I think it was mercury that he was testing. In the cooked group, there was more absorbed, which I thought was very interesting. I'm a big advocate for consuming raw food. I do think that it's important. I think that it is natural as well. Do you need to eat all of your food raw? Probably not. And can you eat a cooked food diet and be healthy again? Yeah, probably. You should probably look at yourself and look at what makes you feel good. You should look at what makes you feel like you're ready to go, like you're ready to seize the day, like you're excited to live life. What makes you grateful? What makes you like stuff like that, beyond like these little subtle signals, right? And sometimes it can be difficult to kind of assess that within yourself, but you could do journaling, different stuff like that, like writing down what foods you're eating. If you're going to eat bad foods, do it mindfully. Understand that, you're indulging in something that might not be the healthiest thing, but maybe it's healthy for your spirit or for connecting with your family. Like, I think that's a huge side of the coin as well. Like, am I going to start, like, do I eat a full raw diet? I don't. Is that to my detriment? Maybe. But I like to eat, a nice meal with my family or my wife's family, and with my wife as well, right? Like we eat raw food, but we cook food as well. And, I think it's important. It's very individual what's going to work for you and your situation. We unfortunately can't go live a nomadic lifestyle. Well, maybe you can, but, I don't necessarily want to. It's not really within my realm of how I want to live my life. And so, but it's about optimization. It's about becoming the best version of yourself, and that's something that you need to ask yourself. What does that look like?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Yeah.
I feel like that is like the nail on the head. How do you feel afterwards? Ask yourself, what does my body need to stay nourished? And, I was guilty of just reading different nutrition books and trying, when I was younger, every single diet known to man. Because it was just, they make such a good case for it. And, we humans cannot resist a good testimonial. Like, we're just like, oh my gosh, cured my brother, sister's cousin's autism, and nobody has cancer anymore. But I found the more work I just did internally and the more connected I became with nature, raw nature, more connected I became with God, I couldn't poison myself anymore. Yeah. I quit drinking quite a while ago. The coffee tastes like poison. I physically can't drink it. And I just started naturally eating raw. In my family, I was adopted, and I refused to eat anything cooked, including meat. Like, I wouldn't eat it. So it'd be like a family of 7 with my grandma. Everyone had their cooked food, and then I had my raw plate of fruits and vegetables. And that's just naturally how I ate. And I was so, I was a strong personality. So it's like, no, go ahead and feed me the cooked food. I won't eat it. I'll starve myself for 3 days. I will win. Eventually, I'll get what I need. And I kind of take that now and say, I'm really just going to start tapping into what my body needs, because that's the medicine. And what do you think is a good way for people that are just starting out and they like I was, just reading every book on nutrition and, trying to follow this diet? And how do you start even listening to yourself?
Bring your books, throw your phone away and your laptop, and go spend 6 months in the woods. And
That's ideal.
no, but seriously, like spending time away from social media, which is so conflicting and so polarizing, and spending time away from the literature, books. The thing is wherever you search for answers, you'll be able to get the answers that you're looking for. So if you're looking for a raw vegan diet is the right diet, you'll be able to find a group of people who say that is, make very convincing arguments. If you want to go and see why the carnivore diet is the best diet for you, you can do the same. And there's papers that support it. There are books, there are people, there are social media accounts, there are very popular social media accounts, there are small social, anywhere, anything that you're looking for, you'll find. So it's about tuning into it. It's about building that trust with yourself, that faith with yourself. That's it. You have to build that intuitive aspect of things. Like, I'm gonna do this, and maybe it's not deep down, it's not best, but you're gonna try it for now and then move on. Like, so many people go from one diet to the next diet to the next diet to the next diet, and then boom, one day they just find, like, yeah, I'm just going to eat intuitively and local and raw and seasonal, stuff like that, right? And then they achieve this balance through all of this little extreme hunting. So everyone's on a different journey, right? And there's no right or wrong way to get to your truth. But I think that faith piece is everything. Tune in with yourself, and that's time in nature. Like, there's no doubt about it that is the ultimate thing that you can do, is time away from social media and anything electronic. Just go and tune in with the land. Like, it's really it.
I find that the more I'm in nature and realizing that I'm not separate. I mean, we are nature. We just have completely separated ourselves and forgotten that. And, the local city park, maybe it's nice, but that's not nature. And I, caution people not to take their shoes off in that, because they use a lot of chemicals and you absorb a lot through your feet. But to take your shoes off and just be that wild human inside raw nature, undisturbed by man, as close to that as you can get, and just listen. I think that's the other thing, Liev, too, is the more I listen, because we are from sun up to sundown distracted with something. Here's my emails, I'm checking my computer, I'm listening to music in my car. You don't have time to hear your own voice, much less anyone else's. And to be able to just sit in nature with your feet, in the soil, back against a tree, close your eyes, open them, just feel into that, and, put your hand on your heart, just listen.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, that listening piece. Yeah, that's a tough thing, because we want it. Sometimes we go to nature, like, even if it is your park, you go and you bring a book, and you bring a journal, and journaling's great, but sometimes it's nice to just be, just sit there and listen and see what you can hear. Close your eyes. You can hear a lot further than what you can see, and tune into what you can feel. Tune into your senses. That's what's real, right?
Yeah.
That's what's real. And it's, maybe the local park is not the best option. It's certainly better than nothing. And I spent a lot of time on the railroad tracks. I was right downtown Halifax when I kind of came to my understanding of everything, and it was on the railroads, and no one went there. There was just this little patch of trees, and there was people backyards not too far, and they could probably see me sitting there on a rock watching the trains go by and stuff. But even just that sliver is powerful, because that's where all of the life went. Now, it's
Right.
difficult for life to go where it's the pesticides and herbicides and all that stuff. So, your park that they tend to is not going to be as good as that random little
Yeah.
little patch of woods. I would even say in the city. I think that's kind of interesting because it was so abundant with all of the life that was stuck in these big cities. They
Right.
all went there, right? Because no one was tending to it. I was the one tending to it. I remember I picked up garbage every day. Like I kept
Wow.
it pristine. This whole little trail, it was behind my little apartment. I kept it absolutely pristine, and I cleaned it. I treated it like it was my own. Like I was in a way trying to give this energy exchange too of like, I knew I was looking for answers. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I thought if I give, I know that by the laws of nature I must receive as well. So that, I think that's kind of an interesting point too, right? Like giving something is, an
Yeah.
offering of any kind. And even that if it's a sacrifice of, time on your phone or a sacrifice of whatever, I think that can be powerful too.
That's a really, really great point, because nature doesn't work in a vacuum. And we certainly don't either. I mean, you have to receive as much as you give, but bringing in your positive energy just into that space. And I found, when I go into, and anywhere I've traveled, I've found patches of raw nature, and even in, New York City, and you'll be able
Exactly.
to find it. And I feel almost like you're led there. Like your frequency is on that frequency now as this wild natural human. And then picking up garbage or blessing the space, or, just feeling
Mm-hmm.
into like, how can I contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No,
Thank you for
and I think
saying
that,
that.
sorry,
I was
go
just saying,
ahead.
thank you for saying that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big point. I think that's a big point because it's fundamental law. You can't, there's no life without death, and there's no, growth without a recession phase, and there's no, it all comes in this balance. And that alchemy taught me a lot about that. Just the law of transmutation, the fundamental hermetic principles, I think, are really important too. But I think you touched on a point there, that frequency, that kind of attunement piece is big too, because you attract what you are. And um, I think this is what they talk about when they talk about manifestation, you know what I mean? And like, there's a lot of terrible books out there as well on this topic, but the whole idea is that you want to be before anything else happens. You want to be internally before your external world adapts to who you are, because your external world will adapt to who you are internally,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you set the intention of wanting to seek out something more, and more, not more as in more money, but like
Yeah.
more life, or something greater, something higher than the material world. And that was the intention that I set out to do. I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what was wrong, and I didn't know what I was looking for, but that didn't matter. That is the least important thing. So don't focus too much on the answers. Don't focus on the outcome. Don't even focus necessarily on the questions you're trying to ask. It's just about setting that intention of searching,
Yeah.
in a way,
Yeah.
right? And it will be responded. Like God has all the answers, and very diligently designed our lives and our paths to create meaning, so long as your frequency is aligned with that. That's the important piece.
I 100% agree with that. And the frequency, you can tell what frequency you're on by who are you drawing in?
Mm-hmm.
What does your house look like? What do the plants around your house look like? I mean, I had a tree that was dying, and my property had this astroturf on it, and the landscaping had been recently leveled, and I just tore all that out and just let it go back natural. Even let some weeds grow, and that's hard for me because I'm just like, oh, it's got to look neat and tidy, and it responded brilliantly. I mean, my trees are coming back. I've got my garden's finally producing, and it was cleaning myself up inside. so that I could see these things. I could see what the solution was and the problem was. And, I think it's so interesting to kind of use nature and the world around us as the biofeedback. What am I seeing? What do my closets look like? My house looks neat and tidy, but my closets are filled with junk. That's what somewhere inside of me looks like. That's what somewhere inside of my brain looks like. It's that, I don't even know if it's a real experiment, but apparently the government gave spiders like caffeine and LSD and alcohol, and then they would spin a web, and, the caffeine one was the worst. And you think, well, that looks similar to my house. Maybe I should try going off caffeine. Oh, wow. Now I'm really centered in, just kind of using it not as I'm a bad person, I have horrible friends, but I've got some cleanup to do, and then it just sort of respawns naturally. You don't have to go out and look for new friends. They all of a sudden show up. The loser friends are no longer vibing on your frequency. They will just simply be repelled away.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I love the train. I love the philosophy of the train. It's your internal environment is a depiction of your external environment, and alchemically explained, probably, it's vice versa, right? Your external environment is a depiction of your internal environment.
Yes.
So there's this interesting, interplay here. And if you want to look at why you're getting sick and you're getting ill, you can look at your external environment. Are you surrounded by synthetic things? Are you living a synthetic lifestyle? What are you consuming in your external world? It's very obvious indication of why you're sick. So there's a certain amount of, we're using technology right now, but we're using it mindfully. We understand the impact that this can have, and we know that we can use this, and then we need to, after this, take a step away and, go outside and take a breath or stuff like that, right? Having this balance, and even just that mindful component of like, we're not going to let this control us. We're not going to let this affect us. Stuff like that is important to keep in mind. But, that's kind of the first thing that if someone was sick, it's like, look at your external world. Look at what is in alignment with the real human experience. And then look at all of, like, I'm even looking around and there's like so much fake stuff around me, plastics, and, I try to minimize it, but even the drywall and just different stuff like that, it's almost impossible to avoid in this day and age, but it's important to be mindful of it. And that's why I love the terrain paradigm philosophy. It's very simple and straightforward. And it understanding this simple philosophy can really give you a lot of autonomy and give you the ability to be able to understand how and why things are affecting you in different ways. And, I think that's an amazing part about it too. And it doesn't sell, and that's why they created the germ theory and they created the pharmaceutical industry, stuff like that. Just all these nonsense theories about health and wellness, because they got to create something that sells, because otherwise,
100%. And you can't buy snake oil if you're not in a state of fear and a state of lack. And, the reason I love what you're saying is that nature never lies. Yeah. They're not trying to sell you anything. It just is. And so you can
reveals the truth.
It does. Mm-hmm. And, even like you're saying, like, I look around and my house is what it is. It's modern. It's made with synthetic things. And it's important to understand that, that I shouldn't be in a state of fear and, replace it with mud but okay, spend lots of time outside too. I read a statistic that humans spend 90% of their lives indoors, either in your car or in your house or inside these structures. And I think too, like when I'm looking at, this great transformation that we could potentially have on this planet, it's, you don't really have skin in the game when you're inside glued to a screen. You don't see, the beauty of nature and possibility and birds and trees and the smells. I think the smell is so healing also. Like, I don't know what that smell of the forest is doing, but it is nirvana to me. and it's just like finding your truth out there. That this is my truth, and that's why we communicate with one another. Like, what do you see, Robin? What do you see, Liev? And finding more like what resonates within me, so that I can really just start to tune into what my true medicine is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So towards the end of the show, I always ask people, because you are so amazing at, as far as like, wow, you have so many great ideas. And I find with people, I tend to fire hose them. So I try to, kind of bring it back and say, here's 3 simple things you can do today to start waking your intuition, your fire, your spark. So what would you kind of condense it down?
You gotta go outside. I think that's it. You don't gotta think about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to overthink healing. Like, you just need to go outside and reconnect with what's real. Like, it's very, very, very simple. You can have a really modern built home full of whatever, but if you spend more time outside than you do inside, then you're going to be healing more than you're tending towards a disease state. So nature has all the answers. I've yet to disprove that, and I've tried for a very long time to disprove a lot of things, even within the terrain. Mm-hmm. When I was in this mindset, stuck within this modern scientific mindset, every day I tried to disprove the terrain, and I went and contemplated in nature, and nature reveals the truth. It's very true.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like, if you don't know what you want or what you think you should want or whatever, just go outside and nature will let you know.
I agree. And again, I think it's one last thing I forgot to ask you is I have come to the fluid conclusion. I am still completely open that nothing in nature, including black mold, is the problem. It's when you have black mold in your house, you have moisture problems, and that is aerosolizing the chemicals in your drywall or your pressure treated wood, whatever it is, or the paint. That can cause reaction. But what's your opinion on kind of the natural world? Is there anything that we actually should be aware of or afraid of?
All disease comes from man, from synthetic intervention of nature. It's always the case. Even when natural things can seem to cause disease, it only causes disease because of an unnatural situation that it's been put in. Like, mold seems to cause disease because it grows in our homes where the air is stagnant,
right,
and it's dead air, doesn't move. We keep our windows and doors shut constantly, and it's growing on a synthetic building material, and it's leaching formaldehyde, all these different chemicals into the air that you're breathing in. So is it the mold spore, or is it the building material? Is it the human intervention? You go for a walk, you're inhaling millions of mold spores.
Yeah.
No one gets sick from that, but you spend time in a moldy house, it's not the mold, it's the toxic home. That's the reality of the situation. Again, I only think that there are 2 classes of things that cause disease, and it's toxicities and deficiencies. I highlighted deficiencies earlier. When we're talking about toxicity, it's anything that's synthetic in any quantity causes disease, even if it doesn't manifest as a symptom right away. All of it causes disease 100% of the time. The dose does not make the poison. The dose does make the poison for natural things. So, like I was talking about earlier with the heavy metals, like, if you have too high amount of heavy metals that you're being inundated with, that are being injected or consumed or inhaled, right, that's again, a really unnatural balance of these natural substances in your body. What is the cause of this unnatural imbalance? Well, it's cars and planes releasing heavy metals into the air that you're breathing in. It's injections. Again, that's obviously not a natural thing. And, adding an aluminum salt to your Tim Hortons donut that you're eating, again, not a natural thing, right? So it's always due to a synthetic form of life, whether it's a synthetic material or a synthetic behavior, like scrolling on your phone for 8 hours a day. Extremely toxic,
Right.
Not a natural thing to do. Spending 8 hours on a beach looking at the water, I don't know. I could do that for the rest of my life. I'd be a pretty happy guy, and I don't think I'd be too diseased. So
Right.
I think that's a really important point and a great question. Really great question.
I think that really centers it in, though, for staying out of fear and not looking to the natural world for the cause of your problems. Just to say, if there's black mold in your house, let's look for the other things that we're doing. Am I scrolling on my phone for 8 hours? Am I watching, violent movies? Just start to explore that, to actually find the root cause. And I agree with you 100%. It's always the synthetic world, whether you're taking synthetic vitamins or, killing your natural world inside, napalming your parasites or the yeast or whatever it is. So yeah, I really value your voice in this and highly recommend your podcast. I listen to your podcast over and over and over. Like, wow, there's so much in that. But it's always simple. Just get into nature, sunlight, spring water, living foods. So where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Instagram, beyond.terrain. Podcast, Beyond Terrain, is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, pretty well everywhere. I have a website, beyondterrain.com. That's pretty much. I have Twitter that I don't love posting on and don't love the atmosphere of the platform. Although no social media platform is that great, but I don't know. Twitter drives me nuts sometimes. So you can follow me there. Sometimes I post stuff, and there are great posts on there right now if you want to even just go scroll through it. I post a lot of studies on Twitter there. So if that interests you, there's a lot of studies on there. I think that's a good place to look for and find studies, empirical studies that support sort of the terrain movement. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I have some great blog posts on my website that I think are underrated, and I'm writing a lot more recently too. So I would go over to the website for sure.
Okay, and the links are right down below. So thank you so much for spending your most valuable asset, your time. Liev Dalton, Beyond Terrain. You, to me, are the manifestation of healthy nature. Like, you are healthy nature embodied. So thank you for doing your work, not being a dentist, not destroying people's mouths, and, really just tapping into your truth and your power.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us for another incredible episode of the Medicine Girl podcast, where our mission is to ignite the power within so you can hear your divine wisdom and follow your soul's true north. Fear is loud. Peace is quiet. Listen to the softest voice. Remember, no one is above you. No one is below you. They are just beside you. We are all walking each other home.